Cinema remembers its titans, the blockbusters that conquered the world, the franchises that never seem to die. But sometimes, the movies that shape history aren't born in boardrooms or billion-dollar studios. Sometimes, they stumble out of chaos. The truth is, not every revolution begins with ambition. Some start by accident, a stunt gone wrong, a director with no plan, a film so small, so unlikely, that nobody expected it to survive, let alone transform the art form itself. And yet, that's exactly what happened. From John Wick's bullet choreography to The Raid's bone-shattering realism, from Mad Max's Desert Fever Dream to El Mariachi's $7,000 Miracle 15 films that were never meant to matter, ended up redefining action cinema forever. They didn't have the money, the backing, or the hype. What they had was hunger creators too desperate to fail, too reckless to obey the rules. Each one captured a new way of moving, of feeling, of telling a story through violence, sweat, and improvisation. They weren't masterpieces when they were made. They became masterpieces because they shouldn't have worked at all. These are the accidents that turned into milestones, the mistakes that became revolutions, and the forgotten films that rewrote how cinema moves, breathes, and bleeds. This is the story of 15 action films that accidentally changed cinema and how chaos, once captured, never stopped moving. 1. John Wick, 2014. It started with grief and ended with a new religion of action. John Wick was never meant to be revolutionary. It was a modest revenge movie, a comeback vehicle for an actor Hollywood had quietly given up on. But in the hands of Chad Stahelski and David Leitch, two stuntmen who had spent their careers behind the camera, the genre was about to be reborn. They stripped away the noise, the shaky shots, the artificial chaos. In its place, they built choreography that felt like ballet under gunfire, precise, rhythmic, and strangely elegant. Reeves trained for months to move like a weapon, not a man. The result wasn't just brutality, it was control. Every shot, every reload, every takedown became part of an intricate, deadly rhythm. When John Wick arrived, it felt different. Cold, clean, hypnotic. It didn't roar, it whispered, and the whole world leaned closer. The film didn't invent action, it refined it. No one expected it to succeed. Yet that quiet little film about revenge became the blueprint for a decade of modern action. A single man, a simple motive, and 1,000 imitators born overnight. And while Hollywood studied precision, the next great shift came from chaos, an explosion of fists, glass, and survival deep inside a crumbling tower. 2. The Raid, 2011. A building, a squad, a nightmare. In 2011, Gareth Evans, a Welsh filmmaker working in Indonesia, made a film so brutal, so relentless, that it tore through the action genre like a sledgehammer. The Raid wasn't supposed to go global. It was designed as a small, contained experiment. Yet it became a masterclass in physical storytelling. Inside a single high-rise, a police team is trapped by criminals, forced to fight their way floor by floor. The story is simple. The execution is warfare. Evans' secret weapon was Pencak Silat, a martial art so fast, so precise, it looked like violence in high definition. Iko Uwais, a quiet martial artist turned actor, moved with the control of a dancer and the ferocity of a blade. There were no flashy edits, no CGI tricks, just grit, sweat, and the sound of bones meeting concrete. When The Raid hit the West, it shocked audiences numb to real contact. It made Hollywood's fights look like choreography again. Suddenly, the world wanted pain to feel real, to hear breath, to feel exhaustion, to taste the chaos. The Raid proved you didn't need stars, sets, or spectacle. You only needed impact and a camera brave enough not to blink. But while Evans redefined brutality, the next filmmaker proved that you didn't even need money, just madness and a camera held together with tape. 3. El Mariachi, 1992. Every revolution starts with someone too naive to know it's impossible. In 1992, Robert Rodriguez was a 3-year-old film student who entered medical testing trials to fund his first movie. El Mariachi cost $7,000 less than a studio lunch, and yet it detonated like a grenade in independent cinema. Armed with a camera, a guitar case, and borrowed actors, Rodriguez filmed in real streets, used locals as extras, and edited the footage himself with 2 VCRs. The result wasn't slick, it was raw, vibrant, alive. The flaws became fingerprints. The chaos became charm. Sony Pictures found it by chance and saw something undeniable: energy. Rodriguez hadn't made a low-budget movie, he'd created a new blueprint. Suddenly, young filmmakers around the world realized they didn't need permission or money. just nerve. El Mariachi wasn't supposed to be history, it was supposed to be practice. Instead, it became the spark that reignited the dream of guerrilla filmmaking. A movie made with nothing gave birth to everything, and while Rodriguez found glory in resourcefulness, another visionary from Australia was about to turn wreckage and dust into a myth that never died. 4. Mad Max 1979. Before the apocalypse had a genre, it had a name: Mad Max. In 1979, a young Australian doctor named George Miller turned his fascination with car crashes and trauma into art. The world he created was simple and savage: civilization in ruins, humanity running on fumes, and justice pursued at 200 miles per hour. The film was shot with scraps, no permits, no luxury, no safety, real cars, real stunts, real danger. Miller directed like a man racing his own ideas, capturing velocity itself. Mel Gibson, then an unknown actor, carried it with a quiet fury that would become his trademark. The result wasn't clean or calculated. It was raw energy on wheels. Each chase felt like survival, each explosion a heartbeat. Mad Max didn't just show the end of the world, it made you feel the road burning beneath it. Audiences were stunned. A film born out of scarcity became one of the most profitable in history. Miller's chaos birthed a new visual language. The dust, the noise, the speed, and every post-apocalyptic movie since has lived in its shadow. From a land of dust and oil, a myth was born. And from the deserts of Australia, the next revolution would come barefoot through pain, smoke, and muscle. 5. Ong Bak 2003. No wires, no body doubles, no forgiveness. When Ong Bak Muay Thai Warrior hit the screens in 2003, it didn't look like any action film audiences had seen. Tony Jaa, unknown, unpolished, unstoppable, brought back something Hollywood had forgotten: the thrill of danger that wasn't pretend. Every stunt was real. He launched himself through glass, flames, and moving vehicles without CGI or safety rigs. Director Pencak Silat filmed every fall and fracture in wide shots, forcing audiences to confront the physicality of pain. It wasn't polished, it was primal, and that was the point. Jaa didn't fight like a movie star, he fought like survival itself. Ong Bak turned Muay Thai into a cinematic language, spreading through the world like shockwaves. Its authenticity made wire fu look theatrical and computer effects suddenly feel weightless. Action cinema had found its reality again in the sound of bone on bone. Tony Jaa didn't just represent Thai cinema, he embodied its hunger, its resilience, its proof that purity still mattered. And while Jaa fought gravity, the next man would fight everything else: time, odds, and a skyscraper full of chaos. 6. Die Hart 1988. It wasn't just another action movie. It was a miracle disguised as a hostage crisis. In 1988, Die Hard introduced a new kind of hero. Not invincible, not superhuman, just human. Bruce Willis's John McClane was terrified, exhausted, bleeding, and barefoot. And for the first time, the audience saw themselves in the chaos. Director John McTiernan turned one building into a battleground. The Nakatomi Plaza became a vertical maze of tension, wit, and survival. McClane wasn't saving the world, he was just trying to make it out alive. That small scale made every victory monumental. The realism extended beyond the character. Alan Rickman's villainous fall from the tower was filmed for real. His expression of terror genuine, the crew dropped him 1 second earlier than he expected. The emotion wasn't acted, it was captured. Die Hard destroyed the old model of action gods. No more flawless heroes, no more emotionless machines. The new standard was vulnerability. From then on, every ordinary man versus impossible odds story, from buses to planes to subways, owed its DNA to Die Hard. It redefined courage. It humanized chaos. And as McClane crawled through vents, bloodied and defiant, another man across the world was preparing to make martial arts immortal. 7. Enter the Dragon 1973. A man didn't just change cinema, he changed how the world saw strength. When Enter the Dragon premiered in 1973, Hollywood didn't know what to do with Bruce Lee. An Asian leading man in an American action film? It was a gamble at best. But Lee wasn't just a performer, he was a prophet. He choreographed every fight himself, refusing tricks or shortcuts. The camera stayed wide. The strikes landed clean. You weren't just watching action, you were watching philosophy in motion. Be water, he said. And in that stillness between strikes, you understood exactly what he meant. Then, before the film's release, Bruce Lee was gone. He died days before its premiere, leaving behind something more than a movie, a message. Enter the Dragon became the spark that lit the global explosion of martial arts cinema. It shattered stereotypes and borders alike. Lee's physical grace, his intellect, his refusal to compromise, they turned him into an idea as much as a man. He didn't live to see his legacy, but every punch that followed in world cinema came from his ripple. And while Bruce Lee united East and West through philosophy, another movement was coming, one born not from thought, but pure momentum. Acht, District B13, 2004. Before CGI could fake motion, a group of Frenchmen decided to film the real thing. In 2004, District B13 crashed onto screens like a heartbeat skipping rhythm. There were no superheroes here, just human bodies doing the impossible. Parkour, the art of movement, became its pulse. David Bell, one of parkour's founders, didn't need stunt doubles. His weapon was velocity, his philosophy. Obstacles exist only to be overcome. Directed by Pierre Morel and produced by Luc Besson, the film's chase scenes looked more like a documentary of survival than a scripted action sequence. The story, a cop and an ex-criminal fighting to save a quarantined district of Paris, was merely a vessel for what truly mattered: the spectacle of motion. No slow cuts, no CGI, just physics pushed to its limits. Audiences couldn't look away. The walls, the jumps, the near-death landings, every scene felt like proof that gravity could be challenged, not ignored. Hollywood paid attention. Casino Royale, Prince of Persia, even The Bourne Ultimatum borrowed the style. But District B13 was pure, unfiltered adrenaline. It wasn't about escaping, it was about freedom. And while its heroes ran along rooftops, the next revolution was being fired from both hands in the heart of Hong Kong. 9. Hard-boiled 1992. When violence becomes art, it stops being about death and starts being about rhythm. John Woo's Hard-Boiled was more than a crime film. It was an emotional symphony played with bullets. Released in 1992, it starred Chow Yun-fat as a relentless cop and Tony Leung as a broken undercover agent, two men bound by honor in a world drowning in chaos. The film's beauty was its contradiction: precision within madness. Slow-motion doves soared through shattered glass while gunfire erupted like percussion. Each scene was orchestrated, not edited. The camera didn't flinch, it danced. The legendary hospital shootout remains a masterclass in control. 5 minutes, one unbroken take, 2,000 squibs exploding in sync. It wasn't just an action scene, it was cinema's version of jazz chaos made deliberate. Hollywood tried to copy it, but missed the soul. Tarantino, the Wachowskis, countless directors borrowed Woo's grammar, but few understood his poetry. Hard-boiled was the exclamation mark at the end of Hong Kong's golden age, a farewell disguised as a firefight. And as smoke cleared over the last bullet casings, the next revolution was already spinning through the air literally. 10. Wanted, 2008. When logic ran out, they started bending bullets. Wanted arrived in 2008 like a fever dream, loud, chaotic, unapologetically ridiculous. It was based on a comic book few had read and directed by Timur Bekmambetov, a filmmaker from Kazakhstan who treated physics as a polite suggestion. James McAvoy played Wesley Gibson, a man trapped in a cubicle life until he discovers he's the heir to a secret society of assassins. Under the mentorship of Angelina Jolie's mysterious killer, he learns to shoot in curves, leap through glass, and break every rule cinema had ever drawn. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow, it did, because Wanted wasn't chasing realism, it was chasing sensation. Every frame dripped with adrenaline, every gunshot was a brushstroke. Critics called it absurd, audiences called it liberation. The movie turned exaggeration into its own aesthetic. In an age obsessed with grounded heroes, Wanted screamed that style could still matter, that imagination was its own rebellion. The bullet didn't just bend, so did Hollywood. And while Wanted made fantasy feel fearless again, the next film would pull everything back down to earth, where every breath, every blow, and every instinct meant survival. 11. The Bourne Identity, 2002. Before The Bourne Identity, action was about control. After it, it was about chaos you could believe in. In 2002, Doug Liman's spy thriller looked doomed. Endless reshoots, studio interference. Matt Damon, better known for drama than danger, seemed miscast. But when the dust settled, the mistakes became magic. Jason Bourne wakes up in the ocean with no memory and a body trained for violence. He doesn't know how he kills, he just does. That instinct, filmed with shaky cameras and relentless pacing, became the defining rhythm of a new era. Liman's choice to keep the camera close and the editing fast created something raw, visceral, and human. The fights weren't pretty, they were desperate. The spy wasn't suave, he was terrified. and audiences believed him. The Bourne identity quietly reshaped an entire genre. The shaky cam realism it pioneered soon bled into everything from Casino Royale to Taken. Even Bond had to evolve or be left behind. What began as a near failure turned into a new kind of action where memory, identity, and survival collided. And while Bourne's world was defined by confusion, the next film would embrace certainty, an operatic vision of war painted in pixels and glory. 12,306. This is not a war film. It's a hallucination with armor. When Zack Snyder unleashed 300 Inches 2006, critics didn't know what to call it. Historical fiction? A living comic? A digital dream drenched in bronze and blood? Whatever it was, audiences couldn't look away. Every frame was constructed like a panel from Frank Miller's graphic novel. Gerard Butler's Leonidas roared his way into pop culture, leading his 300 Spartans against impossible odds. Snyder shot almost entirely on green screen, painting reality in light and shadow. It was brutal, it was beautiful, it was completely unreal, but that was its genius. 300 rejected realism entirely and, in doing so, discovered a new truth. Emotion doesn't need authenticity to hit hard. The choreography, the lighting, the slow motion, everything was exaggerated to mythic scale. The result? A film that became shorthand for cinematic excess. Critics called it hollow. The world called it unforgettable. 300 proved that spectacle could still have soul, and that style, when committed to completely, could become substance. And as Spartans fell in glory, the next heroes would face an enemy that couldn't be seen, couldn't be reasoned with, and hunted them for sport. 13. Predator, 1987. It began as a joke and ended as a masterpiece of tension. In 1987, Predator was pitched as Rocky fights an alien, ridiculous. But under John McTiernan's direction, it became something primal. A film that starts as macho fantasy and slowly mutates into existential horror. Arnold Schwarzenegger leads a team of elite soldiers deep into the jungle on a rescue mission. They expect war. What they find is something worse. A hunter, invisible, intelligent, and patient. One by one, their strength, their bravado, their technology, all stripped away. The first creature design was scrapped. The original actor Jean-Claude Van Damme quit. The production nearly collapsed. Then Stan Winston arrived, creating the Predator we know. The mandibles, the dreadlocks, the thermal vision. The beast was terrifying because it felt believable. By the end, Arnold's character survives not through power, but regression, covering himself in mud, relying on instinct, becoming more beast than man. Predator didn't just pit humans against an alien, it forced humanity to confront its own fragility. What began as pulp became parable. The hunter and the hunted trading places forever. And while Predator found poetry in terror, the next film would find madness in motion, a cinematic heart attack with no pause button. 14. Crank, 2006. If a movie could have a pulse, Crank would be the heartbeat. Released in 2006, Crank didn't follow rules. It detonated them. Jason Statham's Chev Chelios wakes up poisoned, told that his heart will stop unless he keeps his adrenaline high. What follows is less a film than a controlled explosion. Directors Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor filmed at the speed of panic. Rollerblades for tracking shots, handheld cameras flying through chaos, real stunts on real streets. The film moves like a body on overdrive, sweat, noise, profanity, electricity. Crank mocks realism, mocks narrative, mocks good taste, and in doing so, becomes something strangely pure. It's a satire of the very genre it belongs to. Every absurd sequence, every impossible stunt feels like a dare to the audience. Still breathing? When Chev finally falls from a helicopter, flipping off the world as he dies, it's not defeat, it's a punchline. The movie ends the only way it could, in freefall. In a landscape obsessed with perfection, Crank embraced chaos and made it thrilling. It was ugly, excessive, alive, and proud of it. And after all that noise, silence returned. A different kind of war awaits a man fighting ghosts no one else can see. 15. Rambo, First Blood, 1982. Long before the myth, there was just a man in pain. When First Blood arrived in 1982, audiences expected explosions. Instead, they got trauma. John Rambo wasn't the muscle-bound icon he'd later become. He was broken, lost, wandering a country that had forgotten him. Sylvester Stallone rewrote much of the script himself, turning what could have been another violent action film into a story of alienation. The violence that erupts isn't glory, it's panic. A small-town sheriff sees a drifter, the drifter sees another war, and once it begins, no one can stop it. Rambo doesn't kill out of hate. He kills because survival has replaced morality. The final breakdown, his confession, his tears, his collapse, wasn't scripted for applause. It was the sound of a man finally breaking. Audiences missed the message. They saw strength instead of sorrow. Sequels turned Rambo into a myth of vengeance, undoing the tragedy that made him human. First Blood was never about victory. It was about aftermath. And its irony endures. A movie meant to question violence accidentally became its greatest celebration. Bonus fact: Game of Death, 1978. A film finished by those who didn't understand it. When Game of Death began shooting in 1972, Bruce Lee was crafting more than a martial arts movie, he was building a philosophy. The story was simple: a man ascending a pagoda, facing a new opponent on each floor, each battle representing a different approach to life and combat. Adapt or fall. Then, before the film could be completed, Lee died. Only a handful of minutes had been filmed. 5 years later, the studio decided to finish it anyway. But without its creator, it became something else entirely. Doubles wore masks molded from Lee's face. Old footage was stitched into new scenes. In the most surreal act of exploitation, real images from Bruce Lee's funeral were used to fill narrative gaps. What emerged wasn't his film, it was a ghost trying to imitate a man. And yet, buried within that distortion was brilliance. The original footage, Lee's fight with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, remains one of the purest expressions of cinematic martial arts ever captured. Grace without ego, violence without hate. Game of Death is haunting not because of what it became, but because of what it could have been. It's proof that some visions can't be resurrected, no matter how much the world demands it. Even in death, Bruce Lee taught his final lesson: technique can be copied, but spirit never can. Cinema isn't built on perfection. It's built on accidents, on chaos, luck, desperation, and the rare moments when failure turns into discovery. Each of these 15 films began as a risk, a mistake, or a last chance. None of them were meant to make history. Yet, together, they reshaped what action means: movement as storytelling, violence as art, chaos as truth. Maybe that's the real beauty of cinema, it never obeys the plan. So tell us, which of these accidents do you think changed cinema the most? And which forgotten film might still be out there waiting to do it again, completely by mistake?